March 31, 1943. Second Lieutenant Owen John Baggett hung from his parachute 2,000 feet above the Burmese jungle. Blood ran down his arm from a bullet wound. Below him, his B-24 Liberator bomber was a spreading fireball in the trees. Around him, Japanese Ki-43 fighters circled like sharks, hunting the survivors. 2 of his crewmates were already dead, machine-gunned in their parachutes. Baggett had watched them die. Now it was his turn. One fighter broke from the formation and dove toward him. The pilot opened his canopy as he approached, slowing to near stalling speed, coming in close to finish the job. Baggett had seconds to make a decision. He could keep playing dead and hope the pilot would leave him alone. Or he could do something that had never been done before in the history of aerial warfare. He reached for the Colt M1911 .45 caliber pistol strapped to his leg. And he fired. What happened next became one of the most debated stories of World War II. Did an American pilot really shoot down a Japanese fighter with a handgun while dangling from a parachute? Historians still argue about it. Japanese records don't confirm it. But the legend persists. And Owen Baggett, until his death in 2006, believed it happened. This is his story. Every verified fact, every documented detail, and the mystery that remains unsolved. Owen Baggett was 22 years old when he arrived in India in late 1942. Born in Graham, Texas, he'd been the drum major at Hardin-Simmons University, class of 1941. After Pearl Harbor, he enlisted in the Army Air Corps, graduated flight school in July 1942, and was assigned to the 7th Bombardment Group, 9th Bomb Squadron, based at Pandaveswar Airfield in British India. The 10th Air Force in India was the smallest of America's combat air forces, but had the largest area of responsibility. Their job: keep the supply line open to China and disrupt Japanese logistics flowing from Rangoon north through Burma. The 7th Bomb Group flew long, dangerous missions deep into Japanese territory with minimal fighter escort. It was some of the most hazardous flying in the war. On the morning of March 31st, 12 B-24 Liberators took off on a mission to destroy a railroad bridge at Pyinmana, halfway between Rangoon and Mandalay. The target sat near 2 active Japanese fighter bases. Everyone knew this would be a rough one. Colonel Conrad Necrason, commander of the 7th Bomb Group, led the formation personally. First Lieutenant Lloyd Jensen piloted the B-24 on Necrason's right wing. His co-pilot was 2nd Lieutenant Baggett. They never made it to the target. 13 Ki-43 fighters from the Japanese Army Air Force's 64th Sentai intercepted the formation before the bombers could reach Pyinmana. The Ki-43, called the Hayabusa, or Peregrine Falcon by the Japanese and nicknamed Oscar by the Allies, was fast and maneuverable. With a top speed of 330 miles per hour, it could run circles around the lumbering Liberators. The Japanese fighters tore into the formation. Colonel Necrason's aircraft took hits immediately. The colonel was seriously wounded. Jensen's B-24 caught fire as Japanese rounds ruptured the fuel tanks and exploded the oxygen bottles. Smoke and fumes filled the bomber. The intercom went dead. Jensen gave the order to bail out, hand-signaling the crew because they couldn't hear him over the roar of flames and wind. Baggett helped get the gunners out, then grabbed his own parachute. Nearly overcome by smoke, he jumped. His chute opened. He counted 4 more canopies before the B-24 exploded in a massive fireball. 5 men had made it out. The rest died in the plane. What happened next violated every rule of warfare. The Japanese pilots turned their guns on the parachuting survivors, Machine gun fire tore through the silk canopies. 2 of Baggett's crewmates were hit and killed as they drifted helplessly toward the jungle below. A third man took rounds through his chute, but somehow survived. Then a burst caught Baggett in the arm. The bullet grazed him, drawing blood, but not doing serious damage. He knew what was coming next. The fighters would circle back and finish the job. Baggett made a decision. He would play dead. Go limp in the harness. Let his body hang slack. Maybe, just maybe, the pilots would think he was already gone and leave him alone. It almost worked. Several fighters made passes but didn't fire. They could see blood on his uniform. They assumed he was dead or dying. But one pilot wasn't satisfied. He broke from the formation and came back for a closer look. The Ki-43 approached slowly, the pilot scanning the American for signs of life. Baggett remained motionless. Don't move, don't breathe. Don't give him a reason to shoot. The fighter circled once. Then it came back again, this time even slower. The pilot opened his canopy. Fresh air, better visibility. He was coming in for a final inspection, nose up, almost stalling, just a few feet away from Baggett's chute. That's when Baggett decided he wasn't going to die without fighting back. While pretending to be dead, he'd managed to get his hand on the Colt M19 1145 caliber automatic pistol in his shoulder holster. Standard issue for aircrew. 7 rounds, 230 grain bullets. At this range, if he could hit the pilot, the .45 would do the job. The fighter drifted closer. 10 feet. 5 feet. The pilot's face was visible through the open canopy. Baggett raised the pistol and fired. 4 shots. Bang, 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 bang. At point-blank range, aiming for the cockpit, for the pilot. The Ki-43 stalled. The nose dropped. The fighter fell away, spinning down through the clouds toward the jungle 2,000 feet below. Baggett watched it disappear. Then he realized he was still descending, still alive, and Japanese soldiers were waiting on the ground. Baggett hit the ground near a village. Japanese soldiers were waiting. They'd watched the air battle. They'd seen the parachutes. Within minutes, Baggett and 3 other survivors were captured. The rest of the crew was dead. Baggett became a prisoner of war. He would spend the next 2 years and 4 months in Japanese captivity, most of it at Changi Prison camp near Singapore. His weight dropped from 180 pounds to 90. Starvation, disease, beatings. He survived it all. During his captivity, strange things happened. Shortly after his capture, Baggett was brought before a Japanese major general who oversaw all prisoners of war in the region. The general treated him differently than other POWs, almost like a celebrity. The general even offered Baggett the opportunity to commit seppuku, ritual suicide, calling it the honorable thing to do for a warrior. Baggett declined. A few months later, Colonel Harry Melton, commander of the 311th Fighter Group, was shot down and passed through the same prison camp. Melton had a conversation with a Japanese colonel who told him something remarkable. The Japanese had found the wreckage of a Ki-43 that had crashed on March 31st near Pyinmana. The pilot was dead, thrown from the aircraft on impact, and he had a bullet wound in his head. The story spread through the POW camp. The Americans couldn't believe it. The Japanese seemed almost respectful of it. Had Baggett really done the impossible? Had he shot down a fighter plane with a pistol while hanging from a parachute? But here's where it gets complicated. After the war, researchers checked Japanese records. The 64th Sentai, the unit that attacked Baggett's formation, reported no aircraft losses on March 31st, 1943. None. Every Ki-43 that took off that morning came back. Either the Japanese records were wrong, or the fighter Baggett saw falling managed to recover and land safely. Or it never happened the way Baggett remembered. Some historians suggest the pilot might have been wounded but recovered enough to land the aircraft, then covered up the incident to avoid embarrassment. Others point out that Japanese record-keeping in Burma wasn't exactly precise, especially for damaged aircraft that made it back to base. Still others think the whole thing might be a legend that grew in the telling, a story that gave hope to desperate men in a prison camp. Baggett himself was cautious about the claim. He never bragged about it. When asked directly, he would say he believed he hit the pilot and watched the plane fall, but he couldn't confirm what happened after it dropped into the clouds. He saw it stall, he saw it spin, but he didn't see it crash. The rest was inference and second-hand reports from Japanese officers. On August 15, 1945, Japan surrendered. Days later, 8 Office of Strategic Services agents parachuted into Singapore on a daring rescue mission. They overpowered the Japanese guards and liberated Baggett and 37 other prisoners of war. Baggett came home weighing 90 pounds, ravaged by malnutrition and tropical disease, but alive. He stayed in the military. When the Air Force became a separate branch in 1947, he joined and served for another 26 years, rising to the rank of colonel. He was known at Mitchell Air Force Base for his work with children, sponsoring kids to be commander for a day. He retired in 1973 and worked as a defense contractor for Litton Industries. He died in San Antonio, Texas on July 27, 2006, at age 85. So what really happened over Burma on March 31, 1943? Let's look at what we know for certain. Baggett's B-24 was shot down. That's documented. 12 bombers went out. Not all came back. Japanese fighters strafed, parachuting survivors. That's confirmed by multiple crew members. 2 Americans were killed in their chutes. That's verified. Baggett was wounded and captured. That's a fact. He spent over 2 years as a POW. That's documented. And he did fire his pistol at a Japanese fighter that approached his parachute. Multiple witnesses saw the fighter fall away after Baggett fired. What we don't know is whether that fighter crashed. Japanese records say no, but those same records are incomplete and sometimes unreliable. The testimony from the Japanese colonel about finding a dead pilot with a head wound is second-hand, unverifiable, and possibly apocryphal. Maybe the pilot was wounded but recovered control. Maybe friendly fire or mechanical failure downed a different aircraft that day, and the stories got mixed up. Maybe Baggett's 4 shots missed entirely, and the pilot simply dove away, making it look like a kill. Or maybe, just maybe, Second Lieutenant Owen Baggett really did shoot down a Japanese fighter with a pistol while hanging from a parachute. The only confirmed case in history. An impossible shot. A desperate act of defiance. A moment when everything aligned perfectly. The slow speed, the open canopy, the close range, the .45 caliber rounds, and one very lucky, or very skilled, or very angry American pilot who refused to die quietly. The military never officially credited Baggett with the kill. There wasn't enough evidence. But the story endured. It spread through the Air Force. It became legend. And whether it happened exactly as told or not, it represents something true about the men who fought that war. When death came for them, they fought back with whatever they had, even if all they had was a sidearm and 4 bullets. Owen Baggett survived the war. He lived a long life, and he carried that moment with him until the end. True or not, he believed it. And sometimes In war, belief is enough.